You know, when you take a second to think about it, it's kind of strange how Samus has had such a clear and streamlined design throughout the course of the series, while her gunship constantly changes up appearances. It has remained consistent between titles on surprisingly few occasions, and more often than not has a completely overhauled design the next time we see it. Today, I want to take a look at every gunship we have ever seen in Metroid. Of course, most of our time will be spent looking at Samus' ship, but I also wanted to reel in the few other gunships we've encountered, just to complete the full picture. All the way back in 1987, when the original Metroid released, Samus already used her own personal ship to get the Zebus, as explained in the manual, but it wasn't until the sequel that we would get our first look at it. However, one remnant of the series' early days that I want to include here is that there are some different names used for Samus' ship in unofficial material. These include the Cosmo Liner, in a guide for the game, and the Hunter 4, used in Nintendo comics. I doubt the ship will ever get an official name at this point, but I don't know, I've always found it a missed opportunity for such an iconic image of the series to lack a name, and it's interesting, side material did try to get something started. Anyway, back to the games, where I want to keep things chronological by looking at Zero Mission first, which does feature Samus' gunship named Starship here. In what is its first in-universe appearance, it already resembles Samus' helmet, albeit largely in red instead of orange like the power suit. The cockpit is vaguely triangular in shape, while the wings kinda resemble an old school phone with their sharp curvature. The entrance and exit of the ship is at the top, which is of course something we're fully used to by now, but that's a design decision I don't think I've seen too often with futuristic spacecraft. Personally, I've always felt this design was a little clunky, and the colors don't really suit Samus as well as canonically later versions of the ship do. And what is interesting about that is there is some evidence to suggest Nintendo agrees, because for a video on the history of 2D Metroid to promote Dread, they include a new sprite for the ship in their section of the original Metroid. While it greatly resembles the Starship, it is now colored orange instead of red. As I'm gonna assume you know, the Starship doesn't appear to survive its so far only mission, as following Samus' fight against Mother Brain, it is shut down by space pirate vessels. That said, promotional material for the original Metroid Prime did mention that the gunship in that game is the same one Samus used on Zebus, but considering Zero Mission didn't even exist at the time, I don't think that information is too reliable anymore, considering what happens in the GBA game. And considering it looks completely different by the time we see it again, I think it's fair to say the original Starship's remnants are still out there on Chozodia. And that meant Samus needed a new ship, which we know was made specifically for her on Aelis 3, the location of the Galactic Federation's shipyard. Not only did they design Samus' new gunship, this is also where they made the GFS Olympus and the Valhalla, for example, which appear in Metroid Prime 3. This ship, only seen in Metroid Prime and Prime Hunters, is almost a prototype for the ship she would later or earlier use in Metroid 2. That ship is without a shadow of a doubt Samus' her most iconic vessel, and it's probably what all of us picture when you think of a gunship. But even in Prime, its design got a massive upgrade, getting rid of the clunky wings and adding a coat of paint that suits the power suit much better. While you may think the ship from Prime and the later ship from Metroid 2 are the same thing, as they are remarkably similar, the difference is in the landing gear. Prime's gunship uses 3 thrusters to safely descend to the surface, while the later gunship has 3 pod-shaped landing legs at the bottom. We also know Prime's version of the ship has some sort of cloaking mechanism, and Samus is now able to control it using her arm cannon. Now, while we have properly arrived at the Prime Trilogy, we have to talk about the weird thing going on here with Samus' ships. In all 3 games she has a different spacecraft, which is odd, but not unexplainable. What does however make things confusing is that Prime 2's ship is the aforementioned iconic one, which would appear later in the timeline in a slew of games like Metroid 2 and its remake Samus Returns, Super Metroid, Other M, and Fusion, with the latter game being the one where it meets its end. Notice how Prime 3 isn't in there? Because for some weird reason, Samus doesn't use her most iconic vessel for her planetary travels along Brio and Elysia, but also Bion and Talvania and Federation Force, as well as currently unknown locations in Metroid Prime 4. Now, what is possible is that in a future Prime game, this gunship ends up destroyed, forcing Samus to use her old model again, the one she used to reach Aether, explaining why it suddenly reappears when Samus journeys to SR-388. Either way, that's something for Retro Studios to figure out. I want to zoom in on the gunship from the later Prime games while we're on the topic. This ship brings back the wings on the side, albeit with a slicker design, with a cockpit that has also been streamlined, making it resemble Samus' helmet a lot less. While it is still orange in corruption, it has also already been confirmed to be colored red in Beyond, and I think I have made sufficiently clear that I'm not a huge fan of that color scheme for Samus' vessel. It's not too late to change that though, I would think, so get on it, Retro. Ability wise, this ship is by far the most involved during Samus' adventure, as we get to see and control the ship's inside for the very first time. The ship also receives upgrades during the game, as if it was the power suit itself, including its own personal grapple beam and the ability to drop bombs or fire missiles on anything in your path. We also learn this ship is capable of auto repair and runs on fuel gel, a flammable liquid found commonly on Brio. It even features a cryo chamber as seen in the opening. What is also interesting is that its technology seems to be intrinsically linked to Samus' DNA, as it no longer recognizes her after Phazon has corrupted her body up to 75%. Another thing I can't leave unspoken is how the ship is canonically the first to have its entrance and exit at the bottom of the ship instead of on top, albeit only in corruption. We can already see in the trailer for Prime 4 that it has been changed to the familiar top for that game. We already touched on it, but following Samus' 3D Prime adventures, she would switch back to the ship canonically first seen in Prime 2 for the adventures that followed. However, despite its iconic status, there would be slight deviations between games for this design as well. For example, Other M features a hatch at the bottom, just like Prime 3, while Prime 2 shows it using coordinates to reach destinations, which isn't seen in other games. Fusion, it only briefly appears in the beginning of the game, where it auto-ejects Samus after she loses consciousness while flying through an asteroid belt. She survives, but the iconic gunship isn't so lucky, and is forced to be replaced. The Galactic Federation is so kind as to supply her with a brand new purple ship, which always kinda reminded me of a plane, albeit with tips at the end of the wings that serve as landing gear. This is another ship that Samus enters and exits through the bottom, this time with a beam effect to it, like a classic UFO. It also lacks an autopilot function, which you would say makes it a big fat downgrade compared to the variant from, for example, Prime 3. However, unlike all other previous ones, this ship has a personality in the form of Adam, the onboard computer that takes after her late commanding officer. Seeing as it follows straight from Fusion, Dread also features this version of the ship, although it definitely serves a minor role in this game, compared to previous titles, and is only really seen in cutscenes and on the world map. I do like the slight tweaks made to its design though, with the shade of purple being a tad darker and the blue highlights more pronounced. And while that is every gunship Samus has ever relied on, there are two more gunships that appear in the series, both courtesy of fellow bounty hunters. The most well known is undoubtedly the Delano 7, courtesy of Sylux, which, believe it or not, is the only named gunship in the entire series. It most prominently appears in Metroid Prime Hunters, where it sports a recognizable X-shaped design and, similar to Samus' gunships, resembles its owner Sylux. It makes a cameo appearance in the ending of Prime 3, without the striking colors but with the X-shape. This version definitely feels more rushed and less polished, which is a bit of a shame, as I think the core design for the Delano 7 is really cool. Let's hope Prime 4 puts it center stage. And finally we have Weevil's ship, which appears in the distance in Prime Hunters like many crafts do, but we get a much better look at it thanks to this piece of concept art, which was included in the magazine GamePro. I don't know about you, but I think this looks really sick. It's like the perfect spacecraft for a bounty hunting space pirate. It's both reminiscent of their design in the Prime games, strikingly alien and fighter jet-esque at the same time. Unfortunately, I think chances of a reappearance are small, but I would love to see this ship and Weevil again. And that truly is every gunship in Metroid ever. Which is your favorite? And which one do you dislike? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel to stay updated on all my future Metroid content coming up. For now, thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.